Have you ever tried to put an exact price tag on your own freedom?
Right, like a literal dollar amount.
Yeah, exactly. I want you to really sit with that for a second. If someone were to, hand you a check right now,
Just a piece of paper.
a literal piece of paper with a number written on it, and in exchange for that, they get total unfiltered control over your life,
Wow.
your daily choices, your physical body, all of it, what would that number actually have to be?
I mean, for most of us, we treat that as this bizarre thought experiment, right?
Totally. It's a philosophical question you might debate over dinner.
Resting comfortably on the assumption that, our autonomy is inherently priceless.
Right. But for the subject of our deep dive today, the price of freedom wasn't some philosophical concept at all. It was an
Hmm.
exact, literal, documented figure.
Yeah,
500,000 Hong Kong dollars.
which that translates to roughly 64,000 US dollars.
Right.
It's a very specific, very tangible amount of money.
$64,000. I mean, that's the cost of a mid-range luxury car.
Or maybe a really solid down payment on a house, depending on where you live.
Exactly. But in the sources we're examining today, that exact amount of money was used to, well, to purchase a human being.
It's just chilling to even say out loud.
It really is. So today we are looking at the documented accounts of a 36-year-old new immigrant woman.
And we only know her as C, right?
Right, just C. And our mission today is to deconstruct what plays out like a harrowing psychological thriller.
But it's actually her lived reality.
Yeah, exactly. We are going to trace her emotional evolution. We'll start from a place where she is completely stripped of her agency in this purely transactional marriage,
Right?
and we'll follow her as she falls headfirst into a really predatory blackmail trap.
A double trap, really.
Yes, a double trap. And finally, we'll try to understand her profound psychological awakening.
And I think, the value of looking so closely at C's account is that it transcends a standard true crime narrative about extortion.
Oh, absolutely.
It serves as this masterclass in the psychology of helplessness. We're going to take a really raw look at what it actually takes for a person to reclaim their bodily autonomy.
When absolutely every single exit door appears to be permanently locked.
Exactly. We're looking at the architecture of a trap, how the human mind reacts when it's boxed into an impossible corner.
And how the very concept of choice can be systematically dismantled and then, against all odds, rebuilt.
So to understand the trap, we really have to look at the foundation it was built on.
Right, the context of C's marriage is everything here.
It is.
Because she did not marry for love.
No.
She didn't even marry for the traditional concept of security.
Right. Like we often see in arranged marriages where families are maybe trying to merge assets.
Yeah, or just ensure a comfortable, stable lifestyle for their kids. This wasn't that.
Not at all.
She married to settle a family debt. The crisis was that her brother needed money to buy an apartment, and her prospective husband stepped in and offered a 500,000 Hong Kong dollar bride price to make that specific problem vanish.
Just a clean transfer of funds to settle a ledger.
Exactly. So what is the immediate psychological baseline this establishes for C?
Well, we have to look at her demographic reality first. She is a 36-year-old new immigrant in Hong Kong.
Right.
We need to factor in what that actually means structurally. She is geographically isolated from whatever original support system she might have had back home.
Yeah, totally cut off.
And she's financially isolated. She likely faces immense cultural and, social barriers in a new city.
So she's extremely vulnerable?
Incredibly vulnerable. And into that extreme vulnerability, she steps into a relationship where her very presence in the home is inextricably tied to a massive financial bailout for her family.
The invisible weight of that obligation must be just staggering.
It is. She isn't just a wife in this scenario. She is the literal physical embodiment of her family's solvency.
I keep coming back to the concept of human sunk cost.
Ooh, that's an interesting way to phrase it.
Let me throw an analogy at you and tell me if this tracks. If I go to a dealership and I buy a car for $64,000, I own that car.
Right.
I don't ask the car for permission to drive it. I don't, negotiate with the car about where we're going or what kind of gas we're putting in.
No, of course not.
I feel entirely entitled to use it however I see fit because I handed over the money.
Exactly.
So I'm struggling to understand how the psychological dynamic of a relationship fundamentally warps when one person literally writes a massive check to, solve the other person's family crisis. Does the buyer just bypass the social contract entirely?
Honestly, yes. The car analogy, while it's deeply uncomfortable to apply to a human being,
Yeah, it feels gross.
It does,
Yeah.
but it's highly accurate to the psychological reality we're looking at here. When a massive financial transaction becomes the genesis of a union, it completely rewires the foundational architecture of human interaction.
Yes.
Well, in a standard relationship, even a traditionally arranged one, there is still a baseline assumption of mutual personhood.
Right. Two people navigating a shared space.
Exactly, negotiating boundaries, figuring things out.
Yeah.
But when someone writes a check of that magnitude to, quote unquote, acquire a partner, the person who paid the money often experiences a total shift in perception.
From partnership to ownership.
Yes, from partnership to ownership, because the financial contract overrides everything else.
It just wipes the slate clean of any empathy.
It replaces the social contract of empathy and negotiation entirely. The entitlement you mentioned regarding the car, that systematically erases the concept of mutual consent in the home.
Because he already paid.
Right. The husband in this scenario doesn't feel he needs to ask for anything, because in his cognitive framework, the $500,000 already purchased the permanent answer of yes.
Oh, wow. That's terrifying.
It is. Any resistance from the purchase party from C isn't viewed as a boundary being set. It's viewed as a breach of contract.
Like the commodity is malfunctioning?
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And the source material we have from C's accounts is incredibly explicit about this dynamic.
Yeah, let's get into the sources.
Her husband explicitly viewed this transaction as having bought her to fulfill what are described in the accounts as his special fetishes.
He didn't buy a life partner to share meals with.
No. He bought an object to be used behind closed doors. And C herself describes the experience as feeling, quote, like a toy.
Just a plaything.
Yes, the sheer suffocating pressure of existing under that roof. I mean, she states very clearly in the sources that she believes she, quote, had no choice.
Let's unpack that like a toy comment. Because when C says she felt like a toy, she's describing the ultimate commodification of her physical body, right?
Yeah, think about what a toy is. A toy has no internal life.
No agency.
Zero agency. It exists solely for the gratification of the person holding it. And it can be discarded or broken without any moral consequence.
That's so dark.
When your physical body is treated entirely as a purchased commodity to satisfy another person's fetishes, your internal sense of self begins to fracture.
Because you're internalizing the way you're being treated.
Right. The psychological damage here isn't solely derived from the physical acts she had to endure, though those are horrific. It stemmed from the total annihilation of her autonomy.
She basically internalized the cage.
She did. The illusion of the financial contract is a very, very powerful psychological tool. It tells her day in and day out, you owe this.
Your brother has an apartment because of this.
You have no right to say no. And because she's a new immigrant, lacking a localized support network.
Lacking independent finances to just pack up and flee?
Exactly. That psychological cage is reinforced by very real structural bars.
The helplessness just becomes learned.
It becomes the water she swims in. She begins to view herself through the exact same lens her husband uses.
As an object that was bought, paid for, and owes this continuous debt of physical submission. I want you, the listener, to think about your own life for a moment as you're hearing this.
Yeah, make it personal.
Think about the compromises you make. How often do we let financial duties or familial obligations force us into compromising our own boundaries?
We all do it to some extent.
Right. Maybe it's staying in a deeply toxic job because the salary pays for your kid's school.
Or enduring a manipulative family member because they helped you out with a loan a decade ago.
Exactly. We all navigate these invisible ledgers of debt and duty. But for C, this compromise wasn't just staying late at a bad job or gritting her teeth through an annoying Thanksgiving dinner.
No, it was absolute.
It was her own physical body, day in and day out, surrendered entirely to settle a ledger she didn't even open.
But the thing is, the human brain isn't wired to sustain that level of constant, inescapable threat and commodification.
It has to break at some point.
Or escape. The amygdala, which is our threat detection center, it needs an off switch. And if the physical environment absolutely refuses to provide one, the brain will desperately try to create one.
It seeks a vacuum.
Yes. It seeks a place where the physical body doesn't matter.
And for C, that vacuum, that sanctuary, was her phone.
Right.
Unable to breathe under that crushing domestic pressure, unable to endure being a purchased toy for her husband's fetishes, she turns to the digital world.
Specifically, she turns to the app Xiaohongshu.
Right. which is often described as a lifestyle and social platform.
The psychology of online spaces for people who are physically and emotionally isolated is really fascinating.
Why is that? Why do individuals in deeply abusive or restrictive situations so often retreat into the internet?
Because when your real world is a transactional nightmare where your physical presence is quite literally owned by someone else, the digital world offers a profound psychological relief.
It offers a blank slate.
Exactly. It's a place where nobody knows the price tag hanging around your neck.
Oh, that's a powerful way to put it.
On Xiaohongshu, C is not a 36-year-old new immigrant who was bought for $500,000 to fulfill someone's fetishes.
She is simply a profile.
She is a voice. She has the power to curate her identity, which, if you think about it, is the very first step in reclaiming agency.
She gets to decide who she is.
Right. She can seek out genuine human connection without the suffocating baggage of her physical reality dragging her down.
The digital space allows her to project a version of herself that is still human.
Still worthy of a normal conversation.
Still capable of being seen as a person rather than a commodity.
And it's within this digital blank slate that she makes a connection.
Right. According to the sources, she meets someone described as a driver through the app.
And the details we have about this initial encounter are incredibly important.
Because of the emotional contrast they highlight compared to her home life, right?
Yes. C specifically notes that this driver initially provided her with warmth.
But the most devastating quote from her account, the one that really anchors this entire narrative for me, is when she says, he made her feel, quote, like a woman, not a toy.
Like a woman, not a toy. That single sentence holds the entirety of her psychological state at that moment.
It tells us everything about what she was fleeing and what she was desperate to find. I'm struggling to understand the reality of this connection, though. I think a lot of people listening might look at this scenario and think, okay, she's in a terrible, abusive marriage. She goes online. She starts an emotional or physical affair.
Sure, that's the surface level read.
But was C actually falling for this specific driver as a person? Was this some grand, sweeping romance where they shared deep common interests?
Probably not.
Or was she simply intoxicated by the baseline experience of being treated like a human being?
We have to look at the concept of extreme emotional and physical deprivation to understand her motivation here.
Okay, unpack that.
If you take a person who's been wandering, starving in a desert for weeks, and you hand them a glass of room temperature, slightly muddy water.
They aren't going to critique the water's clarity.
Exactly. They aren't going to ask for ice. They're going to perceive it as the most magnificent, life-saving elixir they have ever encountered.
That makes perfect sense.
C was completely starved of basic human dignity. She was existing in a state of profound deprivation where her personhood was actively denied and erased every single day.
Psychologically, it's almost like a deep-sea diver experiencing nitrogen narcosis.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
The pressure of her physical reality in that marriage was so crushing that when she finally found this digital oxygen, her brain couldn't process that it might actually be toxic.
The threat detection center completely shuts down when the basic need for human connection is starving.
The driver didn't have to be Prince Charming.
He just had to not treat her like an object.
Right.
The driver provided a meager drop of warmth. He provided basic, conversational reciprocity.
How was your day? What are you thinking about?
Exactly. To someone living a normal life, that's just polite text messaging.
But to a woman who had been reduced to a literal plaything.
That baseline level of human decency felt like an ocean of salvation. This wasn't necessarily about falling deeply in love with the complex identity of this specific driver.
It was about falling in love with the reflection of herself that he provided.
Yes. He mirrored back to her that she was a woman, that she had a voice.
That she had value beyond a financial transaction.
She was addicted to the feeling of existing again.
Wow. And this intense desperation, it creates massive, dangerous blind spots, doesn't it?
Huge blind spots. When someone is in that state of acute vulnerability, their normal cognitive defenses are completely offline.
They are so desperate for the validation of their own humanity that they cannot see the red flags.
They project all of their unmet needs onto the person offering that drop of water.
They build an entire sanctuary around a mirage.
But a starving person will often eat poison if it is painted to look like food.
And the realization that C is about to face is just devastating.
It really is.
This digital sanctuary, this blank slate where she felt like a woman again, it wasn't a sanctuary at all. It was a snare. The driver she met on Xiaohongshu, the man who gave her that crucial sense of warmth, was not a savior.
He was a tech predator.
Let's be very clear about the terminology here because this is crucial.
Yes, we need to distinguish this from a normal relationship. This wasn't a romance that naturally soured or a relationship that just ended badly.
This was calculated hunting.
Exactly.
Hmm?
Tech predators on platforms like Xiaohongshu don't just randomly message people and hope for the best.
They look for specific digital footprints of isolation.
They're actively seeking out vulnerability. They look for users who are active at odd hours, users who engage with certain types of melancholic or isolated content.
They use a script, don't they?
They use an escalating script, often referred to as grooming for extortion.
Grooming.
Yes. They build false rapport, they mirror the victim's emotional needs, and they manufacture a sense of intimacy very, very rapidly.
And the facts of the trap laid for C are brutal.
They are.
During their encounters, this driver was secretly recording her.
The warmth, the validation, the feeling of being treated, quote, like a woman, it was all entirely manufactured from day one.
It makes you sick to think about.
It was a performance designed specifically to create compromising material.
He engineered a situation where she would be vulnerable, both emotionally and physically, solely to capture it on camera.
And the psychology of what he does next is incredibly sinister in its brilliance.
Because it relies on weaponizing her existing trauma.
Exactly. The extortion begins. The driver threatens C. He tells her that if she doesn't comply with his demands, which inevitably involve money, further compromising acts, or both.
He will send the secret recordings directly to her husband.
Let's analyze the architecture of this specific threat.
Yeah, let's break it down.
The predator isn't just threatening to expose a secret or ruin her reputation in a vacuum. He is actively leveraging her original cage against her.
He knows about the dynamic.
He has deduced or she has confided in him during their manufactured intimacy the highly precarious and transactional nature of her marriage.
He knows that her husband views her not as a beloved wife, but as a $64,000 investment.
Right. And if the husband finds out about this, that massive quote-unquote investment is tainted.
It's ruined in the husband's eyes. The commodity is broken.
And the wrath of a buyer whose expensive commodity has been damaged or has betrayed the terms of the transaction, that wrath would be unleashed.
The predator knows that C is terrified of her husband.
He knows she is fundamentally trapped by that family debt. So he doesn't just threaten to embarrass her. He threatens to detonate the very fragile, dangerous ecosystem she has been sacrificing her body every single day to maintain.
It's not just being caught between a rock and a hard place. It's a vice grip.
A psychological vice grip.
I keep picturing it like a physical room where two opposite walls are slowly, mechanically closing in on her.
And she is caught dead center.
Exactly. If she pulls away from the blackmailing predator, if he refuses his demands, she backs directly into the wrath of the husband who bought her.
There is literally zero room to maneuver.
Every step in any direction triggers a landmine.
Let's look at her peak state of helplessness right now, because she has achieved absolute zero in terms of personal agency.
It's total paralysis.
She is now commodified by two different men simultaneously.
It is the ultimate nightmare scenario.
Man number one, her husband, bought her physical body with money. He owns her present physical reality.
Right.
Man number two, the tech predator, stole her digital image and her private moments with a camera. He owns her secret reality.
And both of them are using her entirely for their own gratification.
One sexual, one financial. And both of them are using the threat of the other to maintain control.
The husband controls her through the family debt.
The predator controls her through the husband's potential rage.
Have you ever had a moment in your life where a bad situation was made infinitely worse by trying to escape it the wrong way?
I think we can all relate to that panic.
Like maybe you were struggling with debt, so you panicked and took out a high-interest payday loan, and suddenly the original debt looks like a minor inconvenience compared to the new predatory trap you're in.
It's that exact paralysis.
That horrifying realization that every possible move you make now actively results in your own destruction.
In psychological terms, this is the exact intersection where many victims completely surrender.
Because what else can you do?
It's the sensation of being buried alive. Any movement just wastes precious oxygen. The human mind simply cannot process a safe way out of a double bind like that, so it shuts down to endure the inevitable trauma.
So how do you survive a game where every single move on the board is checkmate?
You don't play the game.
If you move left, the predator destroys your life. If you move right, the husband destroys your life. What do?
The only option is to flip the board entirely.
We are moving from total paralysis to a paradigm shift.
And this brings us to the moment of psychological awakening. It's crucial to understand how this mechanism works.
Because it doesn't just happen overnight.
Rarely does a person in the depths of a double trap just spontaneously wake up one morning with total, unclouded clarity.
They are too deep inside the fog of their own manufactured guilt.
It almost always requires an external intervention, a shock to the system that breaks the hypnotic loop of learned helplessness.
And according to the sources, an external perspective intervenes in C's life.
Someone, or something, reminds her of a hard, cold, objective truth that cuts through all the emotional manipulation.
And that truth is very simple. What the driver is doing is a crime.
It sounds incredibly obvious to us sitting here outside the trap.
Right, of course it's a crime.
But to someone suffocating inside of it, it is a revelation that alters the molecular structure of their reality.
Because up until this point, C has internalized all the guilt.
All of it.
She feels guilty for being a bad or disobedient wife. She feels guilty for sneaking around on an app. She feels deeply ashamed of being recorded in a compromising position.
And the predator's entire operation relies on her carrying that shame.
But the objective truth is that secretly recording someone and extorting them is a criminal act.
The guilt of that action belongs entirely to the predator. It does not belong to her.
Extortion is essentially a psychological parasite, isn't it?
Yes, it can only survive by feeling on the host's shame. The predator desperately needs C to believe that she's the one who did something fundamentally wrong.
And that his extortion is just the natural consequence of her bad behavior.
But the moment C is able to cognitively separate the predator's crime from her own desperation, the foundation of the blackmail begins to crack.
She realizes, I might have made a terrible mistake by trusting you, but you are the one breaking the law. I am the victim of a crime.
And then the shame dissolves.
And what replaces it?
What typically replaces it in these scenarios is a very cold, very potent anger.
The return of the ego.
It's the return of the self finally standing up and saying, I do not deserve this.
And this realization leads directly to the decision, the pivot point where her agency returns.
C makes a firm, unequivocal decision.
She decides she is going to report the driver to the police.
And simultaneously, she decides she's going to divorce her husband.
She stops waiting for the walls to crush her and she just blows up the room.
She chooses to detonate the bomb herself on her own terms.
There is a quote from her, a mantra she adopts in this moment that is absolutely striking.
I love this quote.
She says, money can be earned again, but life cannot.
Money can be earned again, but life cannot. She is completely reframing the value system that has imprisoned her.
Because for her entire marriage, money, that specific 500,000 Hong Kong dollars, was the ultimate, unquestionable power.
It dictated her worth as a human being.
Mm.
It dictated her physical boundaries.
Now she is demoting money.
She is stripping it of its omnipotence and placing her life, her autonomy, her soul, her future above the financial ledger.
I hear that, and it's incredibly inspiring on a philosophical level, but I really have to push back here, because we need to look at the brutal reality of what this decision actually means for her day-to-day existence.
It's not a fairy tale ending.
No. She decides to report the predator, which is terrifying in public. She decides to divorce the husband. But that $500,000 debt doesn't just magically disappear into the ether.
No, the debt remains.
In order to leave, to truly buy her way out of that contract, she pledges to work 3 separate jobs just to pay back that massive sum to her soon-to-be ex-husband.
That's right.
So my question is, isn't she just trading one form of slavery for another?
I can see why you'd ask that.
She's escaping the cage of the marriage, but she's locking herself into the cage of relentless, grinding, physical labor. She's just swapping one master for 3 bosses. I have a really hard time calling this a clean victory.
It's a very valid challenge. And from the outside, looking purely at her daily schedule, the sheer physical exhaustion of working 3 jobs looks like its own kind of prison.
It sounds like a nightmare.
Physically, her life might actually be much harder now. She is likely getting less sleep, working to the bone, and constantly stressed about money. But we have to separate physical exhaustion from psychological imprisonment.
How do you separate them when they both leave you completely drained?
Because the difference between being sold into a transactional marriage and working 3 grueling jobs comes down to one single radiant concept.
Which is?
Agency. It's a difference between chosen suffering and inflicted suffering.
Chosen suffering, like Viktor Frankl's concepts in Man's Search for Meaning.
Exactly. When she was in the marriage, the physical toll on her body was forced upon her. She had no choice.
She was an object being acted upon.
The suffering had no meaning other than her own subjugation. Now, the physical exhaustion of 3 jobs is a price she is willingly paying.
She is choosing the labor.
She is choosing the exhaustion because that exhaustion is the currency she is actively using to buy back her soul.
So it's the difference between someone stealing your energy and you investing your energy into your own liberation.
It is the ultimate reclamation of bodily autonomy. She's moved from a mindset of, I have no choice, I must endure what is done to me, to a mindset of, I choose the hardest possible path because this path belongs to me.
It's a massive shift.
The 3 jobs aren't a cage. They are the tools she is using to dismantle the cage, brick by brick. Every hour she works is an hour she owns.
Every dollar she earns is a fraction of her freedom reclaimed from the man who thought he bought her.
She isn't a victim of her labor. She is the architect of her liberation.
Let's trace this entire arc of transformation one last time, because when you lay it out end to end, the psychological distance she covers is staggering.
It is a complete metamorphosis of the self.
She starts as a passive object, a $64,000 toy bought to solve a brother's debt and satisfy a husband's fetishes.
She experiences a total loss of personhood, leading to deep psychological fracturing,
Then she desperately seeks a drop of humanity online.
only to become a desperate victim, caught in the net of a tech predator.
Completely paralyzed by the double trap of the husband's financial wrath and the predator's extortion.
And finally, through the intervention of objective truth and the shedding of manufactured shame, she emerges as an active, autonomous human being.
She takes control of her destiny by weaponizing the justice system against the predator.
And by relying on her own sheer willpower and physical labor to sever the financial chains of her husband.
She is a living testament to the fact that you can buy a person's circumstances, you can buy their time, you can even buy their physical proximity.
But you cannot permanently extinguish their fundamental drive for autonomy.
The human spirit, when pushed to the absolute brink, has a remarkable, almost terrifying capacity to prioritize its own survival and dignity over any societal or financial construct.
The story of CE is awe-inspiring. She dismantled the double trap not by finding an easy way out because there wasn't one,
No, definitely not.
but by deciding that her humanity was worth more than any debt, any threat, and any societal expectation.
She looked at the literal price tag that had been slapped on her life and she tore it up.
Choosing the grueling reality of freedom over the comfortable illusion of compliance.
It's a stark reminder that true freedom rarely comes without a heavy cost, but the cost of not being free is always infinitely higher.
It always is.
We've spent this entire time dissecting C's journey. C had a literal price tag placed on her freedom, which forced her into a corner where she had to aggressively, visibly reclaim it.
The chains she wore were obvious and quantifiable.
But in our own lives, the price tags on our autonomy are usually invisible. They don't look like a $64,000 bride price or a blackmailer's text message.
No, they're much subtler.
They look like obligations, they look like comfortable societal norms, they look like the quiet, creeping fear of disappointing others or disrupting the status quo.
The things we just accept as normal.
Right. So, I want you to look very closely at your own life right now. Are there any invisible contracts you've signed where you traded a piece of your autonomy just for a little bit of comfort or to keep the peace?
It's a hard question to ask yourself.
It is. But if there are, what would it actually take for you to tear that contract up?